Can I start by welcoming everybody again this morning? We appreciate your input in getting schools back to work this week and last week. I spent 15 years teaching myself in 5 different schools, so in that time I've kept in touch with an awful lot of my colleagues in both management and teachers in general. So there is a lot of concern out there. People are genuinely happy to be back. Kids are happy to be back with their friends, but I suppose there is a degree of nervousness out there, and I suppose it's important that we hear the concerns from the unions this morning on behalf of staff and students in the school. Can I just initially ask, just in relation to the members of the teaching unions, have you any estimate in regards to how many of your members, both primary and secondary, would fall into the category of having a serious underlying condition? And how many of those staff have, I suppose, been excused from the physical workplace so far, or how many of those will say are attempting to appeal maybe the decision that, if they were turned down the facility to work from home? Could I just ask that of the 3 teaching unions first, please?
Yeah, sorry, Deputy. Yes, we have not exact figures on that. We have been contacted by a lot of people who are high risk, and their own medical advisor said they were very high risk. That's why we sought an appeal process last week, and the Minister responded. So we hope that they'll work through that appeals process, and we'll have a clear picture of how many people are in the very high risk category, and they will be given work to teach students who are also at very high risk at home. But one of the bigger problems which I was trying to get in earlier there was that in second level schools we have an awful lot of a lack of teachers in certain subject specific areas, and recruitment is proving very, very difficult. In a month's time we have delayed retirements going to hit the second level system, and we won't have the teachers to replace them. So there is going to be a massive shortage of teachers, in-field teachers, and we will be only using a minor number of teachers who are out of field to replace them. So both problems, the number of teachers who are very high risk, who will be clearly identified over the next couple of weeks, who won't be able to teach in their schools, plus the retirements that are coming. We in second level believe that there will be a chronic shortage of teachers in some schools, and I agree with my colleagues in the INTO, more than likely the worst place for this will be in the urban areas, predominantly Dublin.
Could I say, Deputy, in relation to the primary, we only got this more robust appeal mechanism on Friday evening. Some schools had already opened by then, and that was nearly a month after we sought it, so that was certainly regrettable. We found when we took about 600 email queries per week from members since March, but we found then, as we got closer to the reopening, that a lot of those members needed telephonic contact rather than email, because they had their own sensitive stories to tell. There were people who's, in some instances, had 4 or 5 different consultants advising them not to go back into the school building, whereas the Occupational Health Service then, they had a very high bar set by government, and the definitions of the very high risk. You certainly wouldn't be going into school even before the pandemic to fall into that definition. So those people needed a lot of tender care from this union. Our officials spent up to an hour on the phone with each individual person. So we feel that in the next couple of weeks it will be very clear that there's a very significant number of these. There's also a large number of teachers who are expecting babies, whose GPs and doctors are very concerned about their return to the workplace as well. So the danger with this is that if the appeal mechanism isn't working, that we will have a lot of people declared sick by their GPs or by their consultants. They will not be returning, and in a case where a school has multiple absences like that, even the supply panels that we're so delighted with will not be able to cover the gaps.
And just on the supply panels, I know that the primary sector have spoken already about them. Could the secondary sector perhaps give an estimate of how many teachers they believe that there's a shortfall for, particularly in light of what you've just said regarding, well, people with serious illnesses or family members with serious illnesses, but also to females who are possibly going to go to maternity leave? Is there any idea of the estimated shortfall at second level?
Yeah, we don't know exact numbers, and I doubt if anybody has collated exact numbers, but what we are hearing is that schools that are advertising positions are getting very few applicants, and in some cases none. And that's a situation that's only going to become exacerbated, as my colleague stated, about the likelihood of, in the context of the provisions of the PSSA, the Public Service Agreement, a likelihood of a considerable number of retirements in October. And therefore, it's something that we will be watching very carefully in the weeks to come, but certainly the portents aren't good because of the fact that anecdotally we're hearing that interviews are taking place, and lots of them have very few applicants, and some people are telling us that particularly in pinch subjects like the languages and the practical subjects that they're not getting applicants at all, and that's something that can only get worse in the context of illnesses and retirements that are in line.
And at this stage of the school year, you would seldom see a lot of jobs advertised. There are several jobs advertised at this time of year, so that shows you the trouble there will be for schools. In relation to the very high-risk people, we're getting heartbreaking letters and phone calls. It's not a lot of people, but people with very serious conditions who have had cancer, who are missing lungs, who have asthma, multiple medical problems, and they are very much in danger should they go into schools. We're not talking about a lot of people. Similar numbers in one region in Germany would be 400 out of 13,000 would include high-risk and very high-risk teachers. A lot of high-risk teachers want to be in the classroom and are fit for work, but there are some minor cases where teachers, if they go into school, their lives are in very severe danger.
Okay, can I just follow up with one other question then about, I think there's an estimated 6,000 teaching council members or registered teachers who are currently not teaching. And again, I know I'm asking specifics about numbers or percentages, but even if you have anecdotal evidence of it, is there many of that panel of 6,000 will say that haven't been teaching in the last year? Is there many of them coming out that are registered, as I said, that have returned to work?
Deputy, I really regret to say to you that that's a very exaggerated figure. It is a true figure, but it represents all of those people that former Minister McHugh went to Dubai to try to attract them back to this country. They've kept up their registration because it's much easier to keep up your registration and pay your €65 rather than to allow it to lapse. But they are all out in Dubai because of pay inequality. And despite all the measures that we've put in place to try and attract people back here with good jobs, as long as this pay equality persists, we will have lots of our brightest and best abroad. So there are people, of course, who are here who may have gone into other walks of life, who say that they are going to be willing to come back and help out maybe on a day-to-day basis with substitution. But I doubt if there are 6,000 across primary and secondary who are readily available. They're just keeping up the registration because it's easier to keep it up than to allow it to lapse.
It would be the same. We have an awful lot of people who are subjectly specifically trained, which have transferable skills such as languages, physics, chemistry graduates who can transfer into the main body of employment, and therefore they're no longer available to teach, but they may maintain their registration because it's €65 a year, and it gives them options later on, and they don't want to let it drop and remove those options. So I agree with the INTO there. I don't believe there's 6,000.
I'm sorry to interrupt.